Hi everyone, today we will be covering the third aspect of Chapter 4, which is the reasons for the outbreak of World War II. Thus far, we have looked at the weaknesses of the League of Nations as well as Hitler's expansionist goals. So now we're going to move on to the third part, which I want you to cover with the aid of the handouts which I gave you on Friday, okay, with regard to the policy of appeasement. So let's look at the handout which I gave you. Okay, what I want you to do for this, to start off, I want you to answer this question. Okay, you already would know about World War I from Chapter 1. I want you to recall what you learned about how much devastation World War I, or at that time the Great War, it was known as the Great War, recall the devastation which it caused, and think about if you were, the leader of Britain, or for that matter any country which had gone through World War I, the Great War, how would this have affected your thoughts about whether you would want to take part in another war? Okay, and I want you to explain that and write your answer here. Okay, so other contextual information of the time you can see there. Alright, by the time of 1933, which is when we picked up on Chapter 4, we already had learned from Chapter 3 that Hitler had taken absolute control of Germany and had gained popularity because he promised to end the humiliation caused by the Treaty of Versailles. Alright, at the same time, he was willing to use aggression in order to get what he wanted, and potentially only a country like Britain, a country strong enough like Britain, potentially could have stopped him. Okay, but did Britain really want to stop him, even if they felt that way? Of course, one reason which we learnt about as to why they may not have wanted to stop him has to do with the memories of World War I. And now I also want you to look at some other reasons. Okay, so let's look here. Other reasons include economic problems. Okay, if you recall, Britain had already been devastated not only by World War I and the Great Depression, so its economy had been affected not once, but after some years later by twice by the Great Depression. And so this would have made Britain perhaps, it may have affected their thoughts about whether they would want to potentially take part in the action to stop Germany, alright, which by this time was willing to use aggressive actions. Okay, and so I would want you to write over here in this box, okay, your thoughts on how would this point about economic problems have affected how you would feel about taking part in another war against Germany. Because if it's your role, you being Britain, one of the most powerful countries, okay, in Europe, and therefore, and also a main country within the League of Nations, a world leader at this point in time in Europe, okay, if it's your responsibility to stop Germany from aggressive actions, would you actually step up to that responsibility, given that your economy had already been damaged by World War I and the Great Depression? Okay, so this is another point to take note of, and we have a few more points. Another point has to do with military inadequacy. Basically, at this point in time, okay, by the early 1930s, your forces are still rather weak after World War I, and therefore you feel that you need more time to strengthen them. Alright, between hastily going to war and building up your strength so that you're more prepared for an eventual war, perhaps a bit later down the road, you may be more in favor of waiting because you want more time. Okay, so again, I want you to fill in how would this affect your thoughts as to whether you would be willing to stop Germany by taking potentially fighting with it in order to stop Germany's aggressive actions. Okay, other considerations, four more considerations here. One, the Treaty of Versailles. Now, you learned about this in Chapter 1, and now furthermore, right, when you look back, remember at that point in time, you as a member of the Big Three, you were not the most passionate about punishing Germany, but still you felt that Germany needed to be punished, right? But now when you look back and look at the harsh punishments of the Treaty of Versailles, you think back and think, oh well, you see, I was supposed to keep Germany from ever starting another war and keep it weak, but perhaps in retrospect, now that I look back, well, maybe I was a bit too harsh. Okay, and this is what some of the Brits were thinking, and so I want you again to write down how would this affect your thoughts, okay, with regard to whether you feel, how right would you feel about stopping Germany now that Germany is taking aggressive actions, as I mentioned over there, and which we already have learnt about in the earlier part of the chapter. Okay, another issue to be faced was the lack of support from the Americans. Now, the Americans, if you recall, had adopted a policy of isolationism, and so therefore they would not provide Britain and France with any military support against Germany. So if, in other words, if you were to decide to attack Germany in order to keep Germany from being aggressive, America, which at this time was actually one of the world's most powerful, if not the world's most powerful countries, would not be willing to help you because they were isolated, right, keeping themselves apart. Okay, so again, what impact would this have on your decision making? Think about it. Okay, another reason, of course, our good old friend, the League of Nations, not the most effective of organizations, but remember its job was to act like a global policeman, alright, and prevent any wars from breaking out. But so far, as you would have learnt from earlier on, okay, it has not been effective. We learned about its lack of effectiveness in Abyssinia, okay, its lack of effectiveness in ensuring disarmament, okay, so basically it's not been effective. So again, think about it. League of Nations, whose responsibility is supposed to stop wars from breaking out, is not doing its job. It's not effective in doing its job. So you, as one member of the League of Nations, but a country in itself, okay, how willing would you be to act? How willing would you be to act independent of the League of Nations to do something to stop Germany? Do you think you would be more or less likely to do something? I want you to write your reason there. Okay, and the final reason, okay, which I want you to think about is the communists. Now, you basically consider the communists to be a greater threat, greater enemy than the Nazis in Germany, right? And you believe that a strong Germany could help stop the further spread of communism. Okay, so remember, the Brits, okay, they were suspicious of both the Nazis in Germany as well as the communists in the Soviet Union, but they considered the communists in the Soviet Union to be a bigger threat than the Nazis in Germany. Alright, and so they even believed that a strong Germany could help stop the further spread of communism. So in other words, would you then be willing to take action against Germany, which you feel less suspicious of compared to your other enemy, the Soviet Union? Okay, and I want you to write your answer over there. Right, so this is basically how I want you to fill in these 2 pages of the worksheet. Okay, now added on to that, if you move on to page 3, I also want you to answer these questions, alright, over here. With your memory of the Treaty of Versailles, alright, I want you to write down which terms of the treaty are violated by each of these actions of Hitler, which we learnt about earlier on, each of Hitler's aggressive actions. And then I want you to write down, okay, if again you were the British Prime Minister, alright, what action would you take in response to Germany's aggression? Okay, I want you to think about it and write it down. Now, bearing in mind there's no one right answer here, I just want you to try this, okay, so that you can have an understanding of this. Okay, why was appeasement carried out? Okay, appeasement itself, basically giving in to Germany's aggressive demands in order to stop it from being more aggressive, alright, and these were the reasons for it. Okay, war, the memories of the war, and then all these reasons here, and basically I want you through this to have a better understanding of how appeasement was like. Okay, so that's the end for part 1, part 2 coming really soon. Okay, see you for now.